On the evening of July 11, 2026, the political world was stunned by news almost no one saw coming. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina had died at the age of 71 after what his office initially described as a brief and sudden illness. Within hours, additional reporting indicated that the preliminary medical findings pointed to an aortic dissection associated with arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease, though officials noted that further testing would follow. Reports also indicated that Graham died in Washington after returning from an overseas trip just days earlier. For more than 3 decades, Lindsey Graham had been one of the most recognizable and often controversial voices in American politics. He was a military lawyer, a congressman, a senator, a presidential candidate, a foreign policy hawk, and eventually one of Donald Trump's closest allies. But what really happened during his final days? Where had he been during his last week? Who did he meet? What were his final public appearances? And what do the verified facts reveal about the final chapter of a life that helped shape modern Republican politics? This video follows the every confirmed event, every public appearance, every official statement helps tell the story of Lindsey Graham's remarkable career and the unexpected end that shocked Washington. Stay with us until the end, because his final week unfolded far differently than almost anyone realized. Long before he became a fixture on Sunday political talk shows, Lindsey Olin Graham grew up in the small town of Central, South Carolina. Born on July 9, 1955, he was raised in a working-class family. His parents operated a restaurant and bar, where Graham spent much of his childhood helping after school. Life changed dramatically when he was still a young man. Within a relatively short period, both of his parents died. Suddenly, Graham found himself helping care for his younger sister while still pursuing his education. Friends from those years often described him as disciplined, determined, and intensely focused on responsibility. He attended the University of South Carolina, earning both his undergraduate degree and later a law degree. Rather than immediately entering politics, Graham chose military service. He joined the U.S. Air Force as a lawyer in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. His years in uniform became one of the defining parts of his identity. Even after leaving active duty, he continued serving in the Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve, eventually retiring with the rank of colonel after decades of military service. Military experience shaped much of Graham's worldview. Throughout his political career, he consistently argued for a strong American military and an active U.S. role overseas. Whether discussing Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, or Israel, he rarely hesitated to support an assertive foreign policy. His political career began in South Carolina's state legislature before he won election to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1994. 8 years later, he captured the Senate seat long held by Strom Thurmond. From that point forward, Lindsey Graham became one of the Republican Party's most recognizable senators. He developed a reputation for mastering Senate procedure and becoming deeply involved in judicial confirmations, national security legislation, immigration debates, and military affairs. Unlike many politicians, Graham frequently crossed ideological lines early in his Senate career. He worked with Democrats on immigration reform and climate legislation, even when doing so frustrated conservatives back home. But politics in America was changing rapidly. Perhaps no relationship better illustrated that transformation than Graham's evolving connection with Donald Trump. During the 2016 Republican presidential primary, Graham was one of Trump's sharpest Republican critics. He questioned Trump's temperament and openly warned fellow Republicans about the future of the party. Yet after Trump entered the White House, the relationship changed dramatically. The two men gradually became close political allies. Graham emerged as one of Trump's most dependable defenders during investigations, impeachment proceedings, judicial confirmations, and major legislative battles. As chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Graham played a central role in confirming numerous federal judges and Supreme Court justices, helping shape the federal judiciary for decades to come. Supporters praised his loyalty and effectiveness. Critics argued that he had abandoned earlier positions. Either way, few questioned his influence. Foreign policy remained Graham's defining issue. He became one of Congress's strongest advocates for military assistance to Ukraine following Russia's invasion. He also maintained unwavering support for Israel and consistently argued that the United States should project strength against adversaries including Iran, Russia, and terrorist organizations. Even as many Republicans shifted toward a more restrained foreign policy, Graham remained firmly committed to American engagement overseas. That commitment continued until the very end of his life. During the summer of 2026, Graham remained active despite a demanding schedule. He had recently won South Carolina's Republican primary as he sought another Senate term, signaling that retirement was nowhere in his immediate plans. His final public activities reflected the priorities that had defined his career. Just days before his death, Graham traveled to Kyiv, Ukraine, where he met with President Volodymyr Zelensky and continued advocating for U.S. support in Ukraine's defense against Russia. Images and reports from the visit showed Graham engaged in meetings and speaking publicly about continued American backing. After completing the trip, he returned to the United States. According to news reports, he was expected to appear on NBC's Meet the Press the following Sunday. Nothing in the public record suggested that he was stepping away from public life. The verified timeline of his final week is remarkably concise. On July 9th, Graham celebrated his 71st birthday. On July 10th, he was publicly meeting with Ukrainian officials in Kyiv. Soon afterward, he returned to Washington. Then, on the evening of July 11th, his office announced that he had died following what it described as a brief and sudden illness. Later reporting indicated emergency responders had been called to his Capitol Hill residence before his death, while preliminary medical findings pointed toward an aortic dissection linked to underlying cardiovascular disease. What happened during those final hours? What is publicly known? And just as importantly, what remains unconfirmed? Those questions form the next chapter of Lindsey Graham's story. The final days of Lindsey Graham's life unfolded with extraordinary speed. Unlike many public figures whose declining health becomes visible over months or even years, there was no lengthy public record suggesting that Graham was seriously ill. He remained active, continued traveling internationally, and was still making public appearances only days before his death. That contrast is one of the reasons the announcement on July 11, 2026, came as such a shock. To understand what happened, it is important to separate verified facts from speculation. In the hours following his death, social media was flooded with rumors about secret illnesses, prolonged hospitalization, and hidden medical struggles. However, as of the publicly available reporting, none of those claims were supported by reliable evidence. The documented timeline begins with Graham's overseas trip. In early July 2026, he traveled to Ukraine as part of a congressional delegation. Foreign policy had long been one of the defining issues of his career, and this visit reflected the same priorities he had championed for decades. During the trip, Graham met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and other senior officials. Public photographs and video from Kyiv showed him participating in meetings, speaking with reporters, and reaffirming his support for continued American assistance to Ukraine. There was no public indication during those appearances that he was experiencing a medical crisis. Reports from the visit described him carrying out a full diplomatic schedule. One particularly symbolic moment came as Graham reiterated that the United States should continue standing alongside Ukraine despite growing political debate at home. It was a position he had defended repeatedly throughout the war. After completing the visit, Graham returned to the United States. According to reports, he was expected to continue his regular schedule, including an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press that weekend. Friends and colleagues had every reason to believe he would remain fully engaged in Senate business. There had been no announcement that he was taking medical leave, reducing his workload, or stepping away from public life. Then everything changed. On July 11th, emergency responders were called to Graham's residence on Capitol Hill after what officials described as a sudden medical emergency. Public reporting has confirmed that first responders arrived at the home, but authorities have not released a detailed minute-by-minute account of the events inside the residence. Equally important, no reliable public source has reported that Graham experienced days of suffering, a prolonged hospitalization, or an extended battle for survival. Those claims circulated online after his death but have not been supported by official statements or credible news organizations. Instead, the evidence points to an event that developed rapidly. Later that evening, Graham's office issued a brief statement confirming that he had died after what it called a brief and sudden illness. The wording immediately led to questions because it revealed very little about the underlying cause while emphasizing the unexpected nature of his death. As journalists sought additional information, more details gradually emerged. The District of Columbia's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner conducted an examination to determine the cause of death. Preliminary findings reported by multiple news organizations concluded that Graham died from an acute aortic dissection associated with arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. An aortic dissection occurs when a tear develops in the inner layer of the body's main artery, allowing blood to separate the layers of the vessel wall. It is widely recognized as a life-threatening medical emergency that can become fatal within a very short period if the damage is severe. Medical experts note that some cases occur with little or no warning, even in people who appeared active beforehand. These general medical facts help explain why the condition is considered one of the most serious cardiovascular emergencies. However, it is equally important to distinguish those general medical facts from Graham's specific case. Public officials have not released detailed medical records. There has been no official confirmation describing exactly when symptoms began, how long they lasted, or what treatment he received before his death. Likewise, there has been no verified evidence that he had been privately diagnosed with a terminal illness or that he had concealed a serious medical condition from the public. Those details simply have not been disclosed. Following the announcement, Graham's office thanked the medical personnel who responded and expressed gratitude for the outpouring of support from colleagues, friends, and constituents. The statement focused primarily on his decades of public service rather than providing extensive medical information, reflecting the family's and staff's desire for privacy during an intensely difficult moment. For many Americans, the speed of the events made the loss even more difficult to process. Only a day earlier, Graham had been photographed meeting world leaders. He had been discussing international security. He had been planning future political appearances. He had recently celebrated another birthday. He had just secured another major political victory in South Carolina. Nothing in the public record suggested that his career was approaching its end. That sudden contrast between a senator actively engaged on the international stage and the announcement of his unexpected death only days later became one of the defining aspects of the story. Political opponents who had debated him for years acknowledged the intensity of his commitment to public service. Supporters pointed to his relentless work ethic and willingness to travel wherever he believed American interests were at stake. Even critics recognized that Graham remained deeply involved in national affairs until the final week of his life. Yet despite the intense public interest, some questions may never be answered. Officials have not released every detail surrounding his final hours, and absent additional official disclosures, many aspects of those last moments will remain private. What is known is substantial. What is unknown should not be replaced with speculation. That distinction matters, especially when documenting the life of a public figure whose final days attracted worldwide attention. As news of Lindsey Graham's death spread across Washington and beyond, condolences began arriving from political allies, longtime rivals, foreign leaders, and ordinary Americans. Within hours, the focus shifted from the circumstances of his death to the legacy of the man who had spent more than 3 decades in Congress, and to the question of how history would remember one of the most influential and polarizing Republican senators of his generation. The official confirmation of Lindsey Graham's death on July 11, 2026, spread across the United States within minutes. For many Americans, the news was difficult to believe. Just days earlier, Graham had been meeting with foreign leaders in Kiev, discussing international security, and speaking about America's role in the world. There had been no public farewell, no retirement announcement, and no indication that one of the Senate's most recognizable figures was nearing the end of his life. The statement released by his office described his passing as the result of a brief and sudden illness. As additional information became available, the District of Columbia's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner determined that he died from an acute aortic dissection associated with arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. The ruling helped answer one of the public's biggest questions while also reinforcing how unexpectedly his life had ended. Reliable reporting continued to emphasize that there was no public evidence of a prolonged illness leading up to his death. Almost immediately, tributes began pouring in from across the political spectrum. President Donald Trump, who had shared one of the most remarkable political relationships with Graham, praised him as a loyal friend and a devoted public servant. Their partnership had become one of the defining political alliances of the past decade. Although they had begun as fierce critics of one another during the 2016 Republican presidential primary, they ultimately developed a close working relationship that influenced judicial appointments, foreign policy debates, and major legislative battles. Trump's tribute reflected not only their political partnership but also the personal friendship they had built over the years. Republican senators remembered Graham as someone who rarely stopped working. Many spoke about his willingness to answer late-night phone calls, negotiate difficult legislation, and travel overseas whenever national security issues demanded congressional attention. Whether colleagues agreed with him or not, they consistently described him as prepared, energetic, and deeply committed to the institution of the Senate. Democratic lawmakers, many of whom had fiercely opposed Graham on policy, also offered condolences. Several reflected on an earlier era in his career, when he had frequently worked across party lines on issues such as immigration reform, military affairs, and judicial matters. Others recalled his personal kindness away from television cameras, noting that political disagreements had not erased years of professional relationships. Outside Washington, reactions came from leaders around the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky honored Graham's steadfast support for Ukraine, recalling the senator's repeated visits and unwavering advocacy for continued American assistance. For many in Ukraine, Graham had become one of the strongest congressional voices backing their country's defense following Russia's full-scale invasion. His final overseas trip to Kyiv gave those tributes an added sense of poignancy. Leaders from allied nations also acknowledged his long involvement in international security and transatlantic cooperation. Throughout his Senate career, Graham had been a familiar figure at global security conferences and diplomatic meetings, where he consistently argued that American leadership remained essential to international stability. As flags were lowered and memorial statements continued, attention turned to plans for honoring his life. At the time of the initial reports following his death, official funeral and memorial arrangements had not yet been fully announced. Public officials indicated that additional details would be released after consultation with Graham's family. Rather than speculate, news organizations waited for confirmed information, respecting the family's privacy during a period of mourning. Across South Carolina, many residents reflected on the extraordinary length of Graham's public service. From his years in the state legislature to his time in the House of Representatives and more than 2 decades in the United States Senate, he had represented South Carolina through wars, economic crises, presidential elections, and profound political change. His supporters remembered a senator who never hesitated to defend what he believed served America's interests, even when those positions proved politically unpopular. His critics remembered a politician whose evolving alliances and policy shifts often sparked intense debate. Both perspectives are now part of his historical record. Lindsey Graham leaves behind a complicated political legacy. He helped shape the federal judiciary through confirmation battles that will influence American law for generations. He became one of the Senate's most influential voices on military affairs and foreign policy. He advocated for a robust American role overseas, consistently arguing that global stability depended upon strong U.S. leadership. His relationship with Donald Trump also ensured that historians will study his career as an example of how dramatically American politics changed during the 21st century. Some will remember Graham for his early bipartisan efforts. Others will remember his transformation into one of Trump's closest allies. Still others will focus on his unwavering commitment to national security and his decades of military service as an Air Force officer and reservist. History rarely remembers public figures in only one way. Instead, it remembers them through the full complexity of their decisions, accomplishments, controversies, and convictions. For Lindsey Graham, that complexity defined nearly every stage of his public life. From a small-town boy helping in his parents' restaurant, to a young military lawyer balancing duty and responsibility, to one of the most recognizable senators in America, his journey reflected ambition, resilience, and an unshakable belief in public service. His final week captured that commitment. Even at 71 years old, he was still traveling across the world, meeting foreign leaders, discussing international security, and preparing for another week of Senate business. He was still looking toward the future. Then, in the span of a single day, everything changed. His sudden passing became a reminder that even the busiest schedules, the strongest political careers, and the most carefully planned futures can be interrupted without warning. In public life, Lindsey Graham inspired admiration, criticism, loyalty, and disagreement, often all at once. But there is one fact that few dispute. He devoted most of his adult life to serving his country. Whether history ultimately judges every decision favorably or not, his influence on American politics is undeniable. The debates he shaped, the judges he helped confirm, the alliances he forged, and the policies he championed will continue to affect the nation long after his passing. Life can change in a single unexpected moment. Titles fade. Elections become history. Headlines disappear. What remains are the choices people make, the principles they defend, and the impact they leave on others. For Lindsey Graham, that legacy will continue to be examined, debated, and remembered for many years to come.